friends. Today's mystery reader is me. I'm so excited to be here. I miss you all so very much. I have chosen a very special book. It's called, ta-da, The Big Orange Spot, and it's been one of my favorites for years. The book is by Mr. Daniel Mankus Pinkwater. Mr. Plumbeam lived on a street where all the houses were the same. He liked it that way, and so did everyone else on Mr. Plumbeam's street. This is a neat street, they would say. Then one day, a seagull flew over Mr. Plumbeam's house. He was carrying a can of bright orange paint. No one knows why. Right over Mr. Plumbeam's house. Oh, too bad, everybody said. Mr. Plumbeam will have to paint his house again. I suppose I will, said Mr. Plumbeam. But he didn't paint his house right away. He looked at the big orange spot for a long time. Then he went about his business. The neighbors got tired of seeing that big orange spot. Someone said, Mr. Plumbeam, we wish you'd get around to painting your house. Okay, said Mr. Plumbeam. He got some blue paint and some white paint, and that night he got busy. He painted at night because it was cooler. When the paint was gone, the roof was blue, the walls were white, and the big orange spot was still there. Then he got some more paint. He got red paint, yellow paint, green paint, and purple paint. In the morning, the other people on the street came out of their houses. Their houses were all the same, but Mr. Plumbeam's house was like a rainbow. It was just like a jungle. It was like an explosion. There was the big orange spot, and there were little orange spots. There were stripes. There were pictures of elephants and lions, and pretty girls, and steam shovels. The people said Mr. Plumbeam has popped his cork, flipped his wig, blown his stack, and dropped his stopper. They went away muttering. That day Mr. Plumbeam bought carpenter's tools. That night he built a cool tower on top of his roof, and he painted a clock on the tower. The next day the people said, Mr. Plumbeam has gushed his mush, lost his marbles, and slipped his hawser. They decided they would pretend not to notice. That night Mr. Plumbeam got a truck full of green things. He planted palm trees, baobabs, thorn bushes, and onions. In the morning, he bought a hammock and an alligator. When the other people came out of their houses, they saw Mr. Plumbeam swinging in the hammock between two palm trees. They saw an alligator laying in the grass. Mr. Plumbeam was drinking lemonade. Mr. Plumbeam has gone too far. This used to be a neat street. Plumbeam, what have you done to your house? The people shouted. My house is me, and I am it. My house is where I like to be, and it looks like all my dreams, Mr. Plumbeam said. The people went away. They asked the man who lived next door to Mr. Plumbeam to go and have a talk with him. Tell him we all liked it here before he changed his house. Tell him that his house has to be the same as ours, so we can have a neat street. The man went to see Mr. Plumbeam that evening. They sat under the palm trees drinking lemonade and talking all night long. Early the next morning, the man went out to get lumber and rope and nails and paint. When the people came out of their houses, they saw a red and yellow ship next door to the house of Mr. Plumbeam. What have you done to your house? They shouted at the man. My house is me, and I am it. My house is where I like to be, and it looks like all my dreams, said the man, who had always loved ships. He's just like Plumbeam, the people said. He's got bees in his bonnet, bats in his belfry, and knots in his noodle. Then one by one they went to see Mr. Plumbeam late at night. They would sit under the palm trees, drink lemonade, and talk about their dreams. And whenever anyone visited Mr. Plumbeam's house, the very next day that person would set about changing his own house to fit his dreams. Whenever a stranger came to the street of Mr. Plumbeam and his neighbors, the stranger would say, "This is not a neat street." Then all the people would say, "Our street is us, and we are it. Our street is where we like to be, and it looks like all our dreams." Well, I hope you enjoyed the story of the Big Orange Spot as much as I enjoyed reading it to you. Now I want you to think about your own dreams, your goals in life, and who you truly are. And I want you to create your dream house. Whatever you have at home, that's what I want you to use to make your dream house. Build it, it's yours. So here's one example. My one daughter, she created her dream house with a cat. My 8-year-old son right now is working on building his dream house in Minecraft. And together they asked if they could build a fort out of blankets and build a dream house together too. So think about your dream house, think about your dreams, build it, take pictures, send it to your teacher, post it to my Twitter account. I'd love to see them. Remember, this is your chance to show your creativity, and we all know how important our school feels that creativity is.